Welcome back to Things You Ought to Know podcast. I am your host, Kelby
And I am your co-host, Erica Arnautovich.
We are excited to dive in. Episode 1, you got to hear Erica's journey.
Yes.
We had originally planned for both of our journeys to be on that podcast,
but we started a podcast because we're talkers.
And sure enough,
we didn't disappoint.
We didn't. So we are going to dive into kind of my journey. So you'll hear Erica asking me a few questions. I know she's been eager to kind of hear my take on everything.
Yes.
But just like before, you can kind of expect on how we run the show every week is we want to kind of just check in with each other just as friends and as autism moms, just to see how the week has been. I have had a very chaotic week. I'll go ahead and kick it off if you want me to.
Let me hear it.
Okay.
I know a little bit, but let me hear the whole thing.
We were actually over at Erica's house last Sunday and got a call from my sister who was watching our 2 kids.
Yes.
And she was saying that Porter, my 5-year-old, was crying and wouldn't get out of bed. He was playing in his room and now he wouldn't get out of bed. And we were thinking it was just one of his normal things where he, sometimes he has like an emotional outburst and we don't know what the cause of it is. But so Michael and I jumped on FaceTime. You saw that pretty quickly and we were trying to calm him down, and that calmed him for a minute. But we were planning to go get the kids and come back to Erica's.
Yes.
And in that time frame of being home, Michael went upstairs to Porter's room and kind of just investigated what was happening, and we figured out he had hurt his foot.
So yeah.
He has a climbing apparatus in his room. If he's standing on the top of it, it's about 6 feet tall. So he jumped from that climbing apparatus onto his bed mattress and landed the wrong way and hurt his foot pretty bad. So we ended up taking him to Levine's. And if you are an autism mom, you understand just the fear that instills you. Like going into an emergency room, there's going to be the bright lights, the loud noises, the overstimulation just in general. Heck, I get overstimulated being in those environments, let alone my 5-year-old who's autistic. And so I was just trying to, Michael and I, the whole way there, we were like, it is what it is. We're just going to figure it out, and we're going to take it step by step. Thankfully, Porter did really good. He had one meltdown, and I think it just kind of speaks to the lack of probably training in these environments for our kiddos.
I wanted to dive into that for a minute.
Yeah, because we entered into the emergency room, and I speak highly of Levine's. I don't want to speak negatively on them.
Yeah.
I do think that there is a realistic criticism here as far as how it could be better handled for our children.
Yeah.
But they were doing their best, I think, with the resources they had.
Sure.
And so they had, I call it registration 1. It's basically where they're just getting your name and demographic information.
Yep.
And I told them then, he's nonverbal autistic. Should I tell you now? So it kind of helps whoever is going to be engaging with him from here on out understand. And she was like, well, she didn't really know what to do in that moment. And I would think you would probably need to go ahead an internal protocol built into your intake.
Absolutely.
Just to say, there's a note, there's a sticky note, there's something on his chart that says, because that dictates how you then interact with my child.
Right. And there may be a triage nurse or a physician or an NP, somebody better to handle that
right.
kiddo, especially if he's coming in for a hurt ankle, right?
Exactly.
It's not it is an emergency, but it's not something that it's oh my gosh, this is life or death right now.
Exactly. And in an ideal world, they would have a sensory room, right?
Absolutely.
I think every hospital, especially a children's hospital, should have a sensory intake room. You're going to get your most out of my child as far as your assessment is concerned if he's in his type of environment.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, that wasn't the case with this facility, which is shocking to me because I think that they are probably a very forward-thinking hospital system in our area and the biggest out of some of the 3 that we have. Maybe a goal of ours to help bring forth some awareness to them one day and provide a sensory room if we can, find the funding for it. But either way, we got through there. and then we had to go sit in the loud waiting room. We were able to find like a somewhat quiet corner for him. And we had his iPad. We set him up. He was in a wheelchair because he couldn't walk on it at this point. And they called us back to the front desk where the chaos is to do his vital signs. Also, just this is my brain working as far as healthcare brain and mom brain. They have nurse on a stick. You have all these things. Like, why not come to him
Right.
in his safe environment rather than make us trudge through all of that chaos again?
Right.
But nevertheless, we did. We went, and they had what I call a nurse on a stick. Do you call it that?
Is it like the roll-up?
The mechanic
Yeah.
machine, yeah. And I don't know why, when I worked in the hospital, that's just what we called it, the nurse on a stick.
I think that's a really good name. I don't know if I've ever, I've probably been out of the hospital long enough that I don't remember it being referred to that way, but.
Yeah. When I was working as a CNA, it rolled with me everywhere, so I just called it my nurse on a stick.
I love it.
But, with the mechanical blood pressure cuffs, if he's moving at all, which he is, he's stimming, he's overstimulated, it's going to just keep running.
Yeah.
And doing pressure after pressure after pressure with him. And it was a nightmare because I'm sitting here trying to advocate for him. I'm his voice in that moment. Michael doesn't understand the healthcare world, but he just understands our son.
Right.
And so he's like, this isn't working. I can see him starting to get agitated. I'm starting to get agitated. I already communicated ahead of time before they even started this. Like, if you can do a manual blood pressure, you'll be able to get it out of him. Anytime we walk into your clinic, Erica's his pediatrician, anytime we walk into your clinic, your staff does manual blood pressures.
Yes.
And so we model on his Buzz Lightyear, which is his Lovey. It goes with him everywhere.
Yeah.
We model on that, and then he does it. Maybe sometimes we model on me if he's not understanding it just yet.
Yeah.
But he understood it in that moment. And so it took him a minute to understand, like, we put it on his arm, but it started squeezing him and he started getting upset and they couldn't get a read. And it took much longer than it should have.
And it hurts.
It hurt. It hurt him. And he had the red marks on him after. But basically they couldn't get it. Yeah. And then he wasn't weight bearing, so they couldn't get a weight, which dictated how he was going to get his medicines.
Oh.
And so it was a hard time. And then when you go into the room, we finally got back there after probably 2 hours of wait time just in the waiting room. We got into a visit room, and it's fluorescent lighting, barely any kind of like sensory toys available. And I understand, like, I'm not sitting here asking for
Disney World
in a room.
Right.
I'm just asking for basic, I believe is necessities for our children.
Yes.
I mean, transparently, if there's 1 in 36 kids now that are being diagnosed, then 1 in 36, if not more than that, are walking through the doors there.
Right.
On a daily, hourly basis, most likely.
Absolutely. And you and I both know it's more than 1 in 36.
Right.
It's just we haven't gotten to the point of getting data on the true diagnostic level at this point. So, yes, absolutely. We need to have something in place at all pediatric ERs for sure, if not all ERs.
Yeah. And so I don't understand why it's not there yet. And I say yet because it will be one day. I know it will.
It will.
The right team behind them and the resources. And I think as we bring forth more awareness to this, hopefully it will catch on.
Mama Bear advocates.
Yes. But it was an uncomfortable experience. We were held there until 2 a.m. They, you know how it goes when you have to get x-ray. It's like, for some reason, it takes 6 hours to get back to x-ray. Have no idea. I've never understood it. Even when I worked in it, I never understood why it takes that long.
Yep.
But he's exhausted at this point. And then basically the diagnosis is that they don't know if it is a broken foot or a sprained ankle. They just aren't sure yet. But all that to say, it was a chaotic week because now we've got a child that we have to be detectives for. He can't verbally tell us, I've hurt my foot.
Right.
And we're playing detectives trying to figure out, like, is it the knee? Is it the foot? Is it the hip? Like, something is off on this side of this leg, but we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And so it was like just trying to play detective. Thankfully, we're good detectives with our son.
You guys are.
We figured it out.
Yes, you did. And I have to tell you, when you called me to let me know that you were not headed here, you were instead headed to either urgent care or the ER at that point. Your voice was very calm. So even though I know you were panicking internally, your voice on the outside, you seemed very calm. So good job, props.
Thanks. I pride myself on trying. I try to be the calm in the chaos, because Porter feeds off of our energy, our emotions. Like, he knows that.
Yeah.
I'm an empath. He is very much an empath too. And so I think it was like, mom stays calm, dad stays calm. We both, because if one of us goes, if mom or dad is heightened, then the other parent heightens, and then we're at each other's throat.
Oh, yeah.
In a chaotic situation where we just need to be on the same team.
Yes.
That has taken years of marriage and trials and tribulations to figure that out. But now when chaos instills, we're like, okay, teammate, tag me in. Let's go figure out what we got to do.
I love that. I got like chills as you said that, because I think like we talked about it. I think at another point, just the four of us talking, our husbands, but the divorce rate is 51%, I think we were saying, in just like average couples with typically developing kids. But for special needs parents, it goes up to 85%.
Yeah.
And so the fact to hear that you guys have figured that out, to be able to say, like, look, it's chaos right now, but you're my teammate tag. Like, or I got 10%, you got 20%. All right, we're only making up 30%. We gotta like just stay calm here.
Yes.
Like we're not making up the 100 right now. So that's really, really amazing to hear. So I love that.
I think we'll probably get into it deeper on there's so many things we're going to dive into.
Yeah.
I will just say, because I know probably my family is listening, but my village really like stepped up for us that day. I could cry thinking about it, like knowing that my sister had my youngest son. He was safe. We didn't get home until 2 a.m. My mom then got tagged in and came over and relieved my sister. And you'll hear on our journey, but I didn't have that even a year ago, because we were 16 hours away from everybody. So like I look back and I can say, like, on those days where I would be so alone in these situations, if it was just us in the Boston area again, I'm so thankful like God placed us here, because now I can say, like, okay, my sister's got, like, Parker is safe. He's with his aunt. He's with his K-Mall. Like, he is safe. And Michael and I can just be parents for Porter at the moment. And it was, I'm so thankful for the village, because when you don't have it, you are so isolated and lonely and exhausted.
Yes.
And I wanted to just say that. I know we both could rave about our villages.
Yes.
But I'm very thankful for mine, especially on that day.
Yeah. Well, props to family.
Yeah.
Because, you're beyond needed, and raising kids in general, I get, but man, like when you have a special needs kid in like a chaotic situation like that, to be able to know your other one is safe and like you don't even have to think twice about it.
Yes.
Kind of thing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really glad you have that now, because I can't imagine. We're going to get into your journey in just a second, because I'm now really anxious to hear, as you kind of like prefaced a little bit, you were like teasing me here. Yeah. So yeah, I know a little bit, but do we need to say anything else before we dive in?
Well, how was your week?
Oh, let's just start with last week. So my week was actually really uneventful.
Okay,
in comparison. Yeah. Those weeks where it's like you just do like the mundane, like you get up, you go to work, your kids, nobody gets called because they're sick. Although I will say, so we've had bits and like spells where Luca went through a full 6 months where we did not sleep. He was up at 2 a.m. and then he would fall back asleep at like 5:30, right as my alarm was going off, to get up to get everybody's stuff ready to go to school and work.
Been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. Would love to return the t-shirt. Never want to do it again.
No, that is like a t-shirt that needs to go out of stock. Like return to sender. Do not want it.
Yes.
No. We have since gotten him on a supplement that we'll go into, I think, on another podcast. We've got 2 supplements in place for him that are totally natural that we kind of have like researched and found out about, and has worked like a charm. We also got a cubby bed for him that works like a charm 99% of the nights.
Shout out Cubby Bed. If AI is picking this up, we would love a sponsor.
Yeah. So, Puppy Bed, we do love you. You have really saved my sleep schedule. Send one our way. We will shout you out. No, so yeah, he like 99% of the night now between all of the things, and like we've, restricted diet and all of that. Like we've tweaked all the things we can tweak. But he does this like once a month. I swear it's one day a month. And this week was
it was that week.
It was the week, I guess. And I haven't figured out why. Because, like, he swam that night. Like, he should have been really tired. Like, we did all the same things. And he woke up at, like, 2. And the nice thing was, though, is I laid with him in the cubby bed just because, like, my mama heart wouldn't let me just, like, zip him up in the cubby bed. But I laid there. At least I knew he wasn't getting out of the cubby bed.
Yeah.
We put music on. And, like, I just fell back asleep while he... So, I mean, it wasn't terrible. But, like, I mean, it wasn't good sleep either.
Did he fall back asleep with you in there?
It took him like about 2 hours. Like he was just up kind of watching the music.
Okay.
Because that's the only thing that'll keep him quiet. So the whole house is not woken up. Otherwise he is just screaming.
Gotcha.
So we put music on to keep him quiet. But he's just kind of up jumping. He's like, he thinks it's like a trampoline. You know the trampolines that have the nets on the side? That's what he thinks it is, I swear.
Well,
he's happy.
He's safe.
He's safe and he's happy.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, he jumps up on the side and he thinks he's having a rave party with the music on or something. And, mom's just tilted over the other side like, okay, buddy, yep, keep raving.
That's so funny.
Whereas before I had to be up with him.
We need
all over.
video footage of this.
There is a camera in the cubby bed. I'm like, I don't know if I'm afraid to even pull that footage. But like at some point I will.
Mom's sleeping and the toddler is raving.
Yeah. We'll give him a glow stick next time.
There you go.
But so yeah, that was like the most eventful thing I think that happened this week for us, which we like those weeks. So I think the only other thing I want to say really fast before we jump into Kelby's story is just like every time, if you're new here, Things You Ought to Know is a judgment-free platform. It's where all members of the autism community can come together and tell us things that they think we ought to know, and we'll educate while, from things that we've learned on our journey while, we're learning as well with you guys. So, okay. Back to your journey, though, because this is what I'm really wanting to hear about today. Tell me first, like, this Porter's your first child.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about your journey, like, with the whole beginning of the autism, like, diagnosis, when you first noticed how that whole thing went. When did you notice first? Did somebody else notice first? Were you hesitant, resistant? Give me everything.
So I guess let me start with I grew up here in Rock Hill, South Carolina.
Okay.
Michael, my husband, is from upstate New York. Long story short, met right outside of high school at a little house party. Didn't really grow anything from there. 3 years later, connected on Facebook, and we haven't been separated since. So we've been together for 12 years. He started when he moved to South Carolina in 2012.
Okay.
So he moved back to New York and then back down to South Carolina in 2012.
Now, was it college?
No, for work and me.
Okay.
He won't say it was for me, but I say
it was for you.
We had been talking for 4 months straight all day long. And so, you can say it was for a job, but it was for me.
Yeah.
Basically, he got approved for a transfer with the company he was at.
Okay.
Also, long story short, he lost that job a week into living back here.
Oh, gosh.
And so we quickly pivoted. He got another job. That job now has been his career for the last 10 years. And so it has moved us. We've lived in Omaha, Nebraska. We moved back to Charlotte, in the Charlotte area, for a year when Porter was born.
Okay.
And then at a year, right shy of a year old, we moved to the Boston, Massachusetts area.
Okay.
were there for 3 years, and we just moved back here. We've been here since August of 2023.
Wow.
So
you've really been all over. So you're very good at adapting and kind of plugging yourself into like a new area.
Yeah, I didn't expect to be, but I think I just kind of had to like put myself out there. I didn't go away from college. I've stayed in Rock Hill for a very long time. Up until I got married, and a year into our marriage we moved to Omaha.
Which I just want to make sure everybody, because everybody may not be from this area. Rock Hill to us, it's a small kind of, almost rural-ish area. I mean, it's close to Charlotte, but like you get on some of the outskirts of Rock Hill, you're more in the rural area.
Yeah.
So it's a small area.
You're considered Charlotte metro area still.
Okay.
And when people ask where I'm from, I'm like, I'm right on the state line, like North and South Carolina, Charlotte metro area.
Okay.
So we had moved to the Boston area when Porter was less than a year old. We were in his company was putting us up in a hotel for the time being until we could find housing. We were living in a hotel for 4 months because we moved in April of 2020. And if anybody knows what April of 2020 was, that was the start of the global pandemic.
Yes.
And so right up until Porter was about 18 months, he was presenting. I say presenting because to us, we didn't see anything different in his growth.
Yeah.
And so he was meeting all of his milestones. He was crawling. He was starting to learn different words, different sounds. He didn't have like a large vocabulary, but he was clearly saying dad, dad. He was saying his dog's name Daisy, some of the more easier sounds to say. We didn't notice any kind of social differences until around that 18-month. Prior to that, we would walk the neighborhood. We would go into a grocery store when we were allowed to before the pandemic. He was waving at everybody. We would always say, like, Porter didn't meet a stranger, because he knew he was saying hey to everybody. He was not shy.
Okay.
And I want to say around like 18 months, we got settled. We found a house. We were settling in, found a pediatrician. I was a little bit behind. He didn't get to have his 12-month appointment because they weren't doing well visits at the time.
Yep.
They were just doing sick visits. And so we had moved we combined the two, did a 12 and an 18 month.
Okay.
So I was filling out the paperwork, and at that point he was meeting all of his milestones. So nothing even triggered on the paperwork.
So this is his 18-month.
Yes.
He was 18 months old, but you had combined like his 12, 15, and 18-month visits.
Yes.
Because of the pandemic. Okay.
Yes. And so we did that, and pediatrician was great. We got him updated on the vaccines that he was required to be updated on.
Okay.
That night after vaccines, he spiked a fever. We did some Tylenol, and I'd say within about 3 to 4 days, you could just see what my husband and I say, the light switch just kind of went off in his eyes. You could tell like he was brain fogged. He was not social at all. He would not look at us, make eye contact. He would not, he wouldn't wave anymore. He wouldn't point anymore. Any of the skills that he had up until that time frame, he no longer had, almost overnight.
Wow.
And so we were trying to figure out what was going on. We thought maybe it could be his hearing. We talked to the pediatrician. They sent us for a hearing test. That took longer than expected because everybody's trying to get back in. They started to open up visits again. So we tried to get into for a hearing test, got in. He was normal hearing, no issues. And so we started to trust. I started to kind of myself think about like, okay, Dr. Google, what is this?
Yeah.
Everybody does Dr. Google when you're in panic mode.
Yes.
And it can scare you. And it did. It scared me. And I didn't say anything to Michael.
What came up?
Yeah.
Okay.
I pretty much could just go ahead and diagnose him that he was starting to stem. He was starting to, I mean, the regression. There's so many mothers out there that have the same story as we do. I know your story is different.
Yeah.
But almost 90% of people that I come in contact have my same story.
That regressive
autism story.
Wow.
And so
what were you thinking at that time?
I was terrified. I always have, like, Michael says, like, my downfall is the fear of the unknown overwhelms me. And it did, like, it just overwhelmed me. But I knew I just had to take it day by day. And so we did. We just took it day by day. Early intervention was activated. Massachusetts has a phenomenal early intervention program. They quickly got us in the door with that. Now, where we were, I guess they were calling everybody COVID babies at the time, and he was kind of like a COVID baby, COVID toddler considered.
Yeah.
And so they were thinking, like, everybody is speech delayed right now because of the social, 6 feet apart, not being able to socialize. And so we were kind of just like, okay, well, maybe it'll just be a new skill he has to learn again. But early intervention started being pretty gentle with, like, this would be the next step, because at 3 you age out of early intervention.
Right.
In Massachusetts. I don't know if that's the way here.
That's national. It's a birth to 3 program.
Okay,
everywhere.
Yeah. So he aged out at 3, and they were like, we partner with a facility called Beacon ABA. You don't have to go with them, but you can see who else has a wait list. Everybody else is about 18 months to 2 years wait list.
For ABA.
Then to diagnose, this facility also does diagnosing.
Okay.
So she wanted us to go ahead and try to get on an ABA wait list, because she was like,
confident. She
didn't say autism to me, though. She just said, you want to get him evaluated for this, like, global delay. And so I knew where she was coming from, because my healthcare background, and then also just Dr. Google, kind of led me to this conclusion. That's what she's trying to say without saying it to me.
Yes.
And so I quickly was trying to call around and get them activated on any kind of wait list for ABA, and also for diagnosing.
Okay.
So diagnosing was 2-year wait list with Boston Children's, and they were just like, it's okay, because usually you don't diagnose until around 5 years old anyways, 4 to 5 years old. So you're doing everything you can right now. Nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
And although that's true, and my logic brain told me that, my emotion brain was like, I got to do everything I can to get him diagnosed as soon as I can, because from what I hear, it opens up the world of resources at the time. That is true, because I know that firsthand now that it does.
Absolutely.
So we ended up, I called every day the Boston Children's it was like a satellite clinic where the provider there would just come into town twice a week and have diagnosing days. So she had a satellite clinic in the town that we were living in from Boston Children's. So she would travel from Boston about an hour and a half into the satellite clinic twice a week for diagnosing days, which is pretty much, what those are. You're doing those.
I do know what those are.
So, she was almost on the brink of retiring, but she was one of those where you really wanted to get. She was kind of what we were told is world renowned in the diagnosing sector of autism, and so I really wanted to go to her.
Okay.
So I called every day for almost, I want to say it was about 2 months, and asked if I was on a cancellation list, or, did anybody cancel today? And I wanted to make sure that I was only 5 minutes from that clinic. I could get there.
Yeah.
It just so happened to be one day that I called, they had a cancellation, and I was so quick and available to get there, they wouldn't even try to call anybody else. But it was like, if you can get here in 15 minutes, you can do this.
Wow.
And so
that's what happened.
So yes, we did. We got there.
You were like, grab whatever. We're out the door.
We're going. And Michael was, we were both pretty much prepared at that point that
Okay.
he was most likely going to be diagnosed because.
And now he was able to get off and go with you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thankfully, with his job, he has flexibility.
Okay.
And so he was able to go with me. We, went into the room. He did all of just like Luca, you said, he was very much like growth motor skills advanced. Same thing with Porter, like did all of the things that he was supposed to. But when it came to, making eye contact and all of those different check marks that they check off in the ADOS, it was, he clearly was meeting all of the symptoms. So that day, he was diagnosed with autism. And
how old exactly?
He was 22 months old.
So 4 months after you saw what you and Michael call the lights went out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you activated like nobody's business.
Because a little bit about my background is I started in the healthcare system as a nurse assistant in the hospital.
Okay.
Then moved into the ambulatory setting at a pediatric clinic.
Okay.
And I did registration, I did billing, I did all of like the admin side of things.
Okay.
And then moved into live answer at a multi-clinic facility. And so I was answering phones for all these different things and I understood how to like
triage.
People were most likely manipulating me to get to what they want. And I was like, oh, that's a good tactic. They got through for me and I elevated them to whatever. So I really had learned a lot of different ways. And then I worked on the private side of healthcare for a family practice and then went into management and then moved into like a national director role over multiple family care practices.
Wow.
And then my most recent role was in a startup division for like a hybrid telehealth family practice setting.
Okay.
So I've since stepped away to focus on motherhood and family, but I've learned through all of those different jobs how to navigate the healthcare system. And so I knew like if I called at a certain time of day, I was most likely to get through. Or if someone was going to cancel, it was going to be before 8 o'clock. So to go ahead and get on the 8 o'clock call list. Like I knew kind of tips and tricks that I had picked up along the way.
Wow.
To penetrate the healthcare system.
Yeah.
And thankfully it worked. And so that 18-month to 2-year time frame was reduced to around 4 months roughly.
That's impressive.
I'm very proud of that.
Yeah.
Like I'm very thankful for my work history that I was able to have that knowledge to benefit him in that moment. There's been several other things I could get into with like just on like the mama bear advocacy part. But I guess back to the day of diagnosis, we didn't get a level. And I know that that's kind of like a controversial thing in the world of autism right now is some providers are giving levels like level 1, 2, and 3. If you're not aware, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's usually 1, 2, and 3, right?
Yes. So we got rid of the term Asperger's, and that's just now like considered level 1 or high functioning autism needing minimal support. Level 2 is kind of like moderate, middle of the road symptoms, and like and support, substantial support needed. And then level 3 is like the more severe, and that's very substantial support needed. So, where like Luca was diagnosed as a level 3, but now, and I don't know if that was the protocol then, but like if he was delivered a toddler module ADOS, you're not really supposed to level off of those.
So maybe that's what it was. He was only 22 months.
Right. And so under 30 months, you would do a toddler module unless they had some reason, like verbal communication skills, to bump them up a module level.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, but I think I want to say healthcare brain is saying it's probably because it was a toddler module.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I never even heard of levels until people started asking me, like, because I off the bat was just like, this is who he is. I know that this is also a controversial topic. Some people don't, talk about the diagnosis. They don't want a label. They don't want, they go about it in their own way, rightfully so. Sure. Everybody is, able to do whatever they and however they see fit with their child. For us, it was more, the more we talked about it, the more people we could have conversation with about it. And we were craving that conversation.
Yeah.
Outside of each other, just with anybody that could help us give insight into this new world that we were being forced into.
Yeah.
And so we quickly, like, both of us just dove in. That's who we are. We are troubleshooters. We are like, let's figure this out. What is the best case scenario here and best resources that we can get him? We will do anything in our means to get him what he needs. And we did everything we could. Michael was amazing at, jumping right in. I think where we lost ourselves was through what I call and you call the grief process. Our husbands don't call it that, but I lost myself in that grief process, but it didn't kick in. Grief didn't kick in for me probably until like 6 months into diagnosis, because like I was just in mom mode, getting all the therapies lined up, trying to figure out what navigating my job looked like with having him. We weren't putting him into daycare. So like I had him home. Michael was, back and forth with his job, and it was hard.
Yeah. But
about 6 months in, it really kicked in, and I was like, I'm drained and I'm exhausted. We were going at each other's necks almost every day. How we touched on earlier in the episode of how we were teammates. That's what I'm referencing to the trials and tribulations. It was these moments. It was like those first 2 years after diagnosis was our hardest years. Personally, my hardest year as a mom, as an individual, as a wife, it was my hardest years. I was terrified, but also like
sad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I had touched on in mine a little bit, like, one of my feelings was I felt like autism was taking away that time. Whereas like for you, this was your first experience as a mother. Tell us like a little bit about that, because that's one thing that's very different, from our journeys was I had a typical child first. Tell me how that was for you, and we'll get into it more in the husband's episode for Michael, but like how was that for you as a mom, especially being away from your family?
I didn't know any different. I guess so there's a blessing in that. If I look back on it, I didn't know. I had nothing to really compare. It wasn't until the pandemic had lifted a little bit, we were starting to go back home. My sister has, my niece is only 6 months older than Porter. And so Michael and I, you don't want to ever compare your child, but we're like kind of comparing our child to her milestones versus Porter's. And up until that 2-year mark, they were in alignment pretty much. Like Porter was always 6 months behind her based off of their age. And then now it was like she was 3 and he was still scoring at like an 18-month. Like he kind of stayed stagnant at that 18 months age. And so it was all I knew, but then the glimpses of the reality of being in an area where you're around neurotypical kids, it was like, I couldn't help but like cry in the shower.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I've still to this day, I've never heard mama,
Yeah.
I've never heard those words. I know he loves me. I know I'm his mama. I know all of that, but I've never verbally heard him say that. And there's grief in that, and I'm okay. I was also felt guilty for feeling that way, but now I'm like, it's okay that I am sad about that.
Yeah.
2 things can be true at the same time.
Yes.
I can be so proud of him for all of the milestones that he has and barriers he's pushing through right now, but I can also be sad that I haven't heard mama yet. And I've had to like live in that part of it. So that's like, when you ask me what's that like for me, I've really had to learn like 2 things can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
And it is okay to not be okay sometimes. It is okay to be vulnerable with other people, even if they're not on the same journey as I am. I was isolated away from family. I'm very close with my sisters. They are my best friends, but they had no idea that I was in the deepest depths of misery, basically, over those years. They thought that Michael and I were doing great. Our marriage was thriving. We presented that way, but behind closed doors, we were both
Struggling.
lonely and terrified and just trying to survive.
Yeah.
We were in survival mode.
Yeah. And you were kind of missing each other on the grief cycle, even though our husbands don't call it a grief cycle.
Absolutely.
I always say, like, when he's okay, I'm not, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
And he wants to pull me up, but I don't want to be pulled up in that time, right? And like I think it's vice versa. Too.
Yeah. Something I had to like kind of coach him basically was like, sometimes I just want to tell you how I'm feeling without you feeling like you have to fix it.
Yeah.
And that's what my sisters gave me. Like when I finally opened up to them, it was like they were just like, yeah, this sucks, you know, like
they just let you have your moment.
We're here for you. Like they let me just cry. You know, like they just did that. And he has a hard time doing that because he is a fix-it person. He is my person that I go to for issues to fix it. Yeah. Anywhere from, you know, a broken something in the house to my broken heart. Like he is the one that I lean on to fix it. So it was a foreign concept for him for it to be like, just be in this grief with me. It's not natural for him to do that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't natural for me to do it either. But I basically had to like let myself be okay to do that.
You found yourself in it and you had to. Yeah, I think it's the only way to come out of it and appreciate the others. I won't even say it's the other side because I don't know that you or me are on the other side of it. I don't think you ever get on the other side of it. I think it's just the acceptance of we're in this. Mm-hmm. And like you had said the last time we talked was, we're going to appreciate you. You know, I'm going to praise you when you're in the trenches and I'm going to praise you when you're on the mountaintops. I love that you said that because that is, I think, a special needs mom quote.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's the only way we can do it.
Yeah. It's the only way we know how because you're always on this roller coaster.
Yeah.
You're always on the roller coaster.
You never
Sometimes you want to jump off it, you know?
Yeah.
You're 100 miles an hour on this roller coaster, and sometimes you do want to jump off of it. But I've learned staying steady through the chaos is the way to, and let yourself have the highs and the lows.
Yeah.
But also just being steady with yourself.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the way to navigate it, I guess.
Yeah. I find a lot of strength in you. I think that it's really...
Right back at you.
I think it's really amazing, like, how you talk on things, and it's just kind of like, you went right into this. And another thing I didn't notice or realize until, like, you really talked about it was how your healthcare experience and my healthcare experience, while it kind of got us in the door, yours actually, I think, played better to your advantage in this predicament because I couldn't get to the people that I know how to work with. Mm-hmm. And those are the people I'm trying to get to. You knew that whole, like, the front desk, the admin side of it, whereas, like, they're kind of like the borders, right?
Yeah, and the gatekeepers is what I call them.
They're the gatekeepers, yeah. And so you knew the gatekeepers. Like, you were the gatekeeper. Mm-hmm. So you knew if this mama says this is where I'm going. So you knew how to navigate that. So I think your experience actually was better to have in a lot of ways, starting that.
I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah.
Very grateful for it. Because I can't imagine, think about like the people who don't have any healthcare knowledge.
I think about it all the time.
You're given this day of diagnosis and it's like, you're so overwhelmed. Like you talk about how you didn't hear anything after level 3 in the visit room.
And I went in expecting that.
And I'm the mom that just kept taking notes. I just wanted to know everything she was going to tell me. Any kind of alternative methods, any type of like anything like that. And it was a very negative experience, I will say, because she did not highlight any of his of the positive things he does, any of his like skills that he already has, nothing like that. She just said the negatives and she said the diagnosis, and then she said, these are the next things that you should do. But that's all I knew. I'm a sponge. And so I soaked it up and I like tried to get out there. Hindsight 2020, though, like I really feel like that could have been done in a much better manner. The bedside manner, or the lack thereof, was extremely apparent now that I'm 3 years outside of diagnosis. I can see it more clearly now. It's like that was a horrible experience. We came with 20 questions on, I had done so much research in the area because it is a forward healthcare thinking area, Boston Children's, Mass General. So I started doing research on the gut brain.
They link, yeah, the gut brain relationship.
Yes. And so I'm asking her questions, and she's like, "Oh, that's, I've never heard of that, or that's not science based, or, and I'm like, these moms have done these supplements." And she's like, "Well, I've only heard of kids being hospitalized from detoxifying from metals." And I mean, it was fear factor 101 in that room. Anything we came to her questions about, how we wanted to know more about, she never wanted to help us navigate this world at all.
She was Western medicine to a T. She had no holistic
at all
intervention strategy for you.
At all. No supplements, no nutrition. There was a nutritionist that she could refer you to for another how much ever money it was going to be. I mean, you're just, at that point, we were just a number for her, like to get him in to do the follow-up and then to go from there. And think about how much money we paid for that. This is Boston Children's Hospital, right? Like one of the top ones in the United States. Yeah. The assessment tools, so the toys basically, were from the 1980s. Mm-hmm. They were all broken, and it's like they don't even function. And You're supposed to require my son to know how to function it? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Make it make sense. The math ain't mathin', honey.
Yeah. I hear you. Yanni was so furious when we left Luca's. He didn't go to the diagnostic appointment. He met me at home, but one of the follow-up appointments we went to, they wanted him to play with, I swear it was a Happy Meal toy. Yes. Like, I swear it was, like, I know the ADOS toys are very standardized and they're not super exciting. Like, they look very, like cheap. Like, you could go buy them, but they're $3,200 toys. They're standardized, and like, yes, but I get you on that. But this was not one of the ADOS toys. Now, being a diagnostician, this was not an ADOS toy. It looked like
I don't think this was either.
And I'm like, this isn't interesting to me. You want a kid whose interest does not lie in toys naturally to be interested in this? Get something decent.
Right. And why not, like, meet them where they're at? Like, if we want to say, like, enter into their world to get to know them better, why not enter into their world to get to diagnose them better and assess them better?
Right.
It doesn't make sense to, like, have these archaic tools. It's 2024.
Right.
It's time to update the tools.
Right.
And, I mean, Porter can spell. He can tell you his ABCs, his 1, 2, 3s, all that on his AAC device now, basically his iPad. And, like, the assessment would have been tenfold better.
Yeah.
If there was some type of technological intervention there that he was able to grasp onto and showcase what he knows.
Right.
He knows how to trace things. He knows how to do, but the assessment is to do these different kind of things, which rightfully so probably have a place and time that they fit in the assessment.
Right.
But I can't imagine, like, you wouldn't get another piece of visibility into that child's world by updating the things.
Well, I think almost like do your standardized stuff to get the assessment you need, but then like that's like what I was telling you the last time, I think, was I always try to do something like after the thing is over. Like, I try to end on a strength with the kid, and then I try to highlight any strengths. Sometimes, like, the strengths are like they're tough in some kids to find, like, not tough to find in the kid, but in that 1 hour assessment, they can be like, they're just tantruming the whole time. Like, they really don't want to be here. And I get it, kid. Like, I don't really think any of these toys are that interesting. But, like, we got to make it through this. Like, let's try, but at the same time, like, I don't understand how just like it bothers me that like human nature is not coming out somewhere. And I told you, this is something in healthcare I feel so passionate to change, because developmental pediatricians, there are excellent ones. And I believe they're all excellent. Obviously, they're very intelligent. This isn't a knock on developmental pediatricians. I think they're great, and they have a very tough job in a lot of ways. They're constantly almost like delivering news that is difficult for parents to hear, right? Like no parent wants to be at a specialist in general, especially a developmental specialist, where it's like, look, this may not go away. This isn't acid reflux where I can put you on a medicine and like it's going to go away. This is something you're going to deal with day in and day out in all likelihood. So I give them a lot of respect in that way, but having just a voice of a parent really be able to help them understand that we're not a number. We're not a number. And even if you don't feel that way, like you're not treating us that way, like listen to the masses tell you overall, we're feeling that way. We're feeling that way. And it's not because we don't respect you or appreciate your service. We do.
As the parent of the special needs child, walking into that visit, you're in survival mode. Walking out of that visit, you're in survival mode. And in survival mode, you can only do what you can do. So to pile on another 10 things that you have to do within a certain amount of time frame, and if you do get an early diagnosis like we did at a young age, then you know that you have, what is it, up until age 6 where their brains are more malleable and you're able to kind of help them with their skill sets even more. So we're in like hyper fixated mode of trying to get all of these things done within a short amount of time. And so then you think at that point, every 24 hours that passes is 24 years that you're missing, that he could learn a new skill.
Right.
And so it's like
running a rat race.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that was the thing. And like, for me, at least, I want to know for you was, I feel like I missed probably a good year plus of everybody else in my family, including Luca's in a lot of ways, like the good points of Luca. I think I missed a good year because I was just running a rat race trying to make sure his services were in place. And like, do you feel that way?
Absolutely. I am almost embarrassed to say it, but unless I had video and photo footage that I was actually there with him, I don't know if it's a trauma response. I can only assume it is. But there's a good 2 years after diagnosis where I don't have a vivid memory.
Yeah.
I think I was in such survival mode.
And shock.
And in shock that I had postpartum depression with him. So there was that. And then I immediately moved into isolation with the COVID pandemic. So there was that. And then I moved into diagnosis. There was that. And then I moved into marital issues, based on survival mode. There was that. So like I look back on it and I'm like, okay, that's why I can't remember a lot of it. And I'm so thankful for the memories I have on my phone and things like that, because my brain doesn't allow me to like
go there,
pull the memories without seeing them in real time on the phone.
Yeah.
And that's sad. It's really sad. I feel guilty sometimes because of that. But then I look back and I see all that I accomplished for him during that time. And I'm like, you were working. Like, you were doing everything you could for him.
Yeah, you didn't have your head under a blanket.
Yeah.
In a dark room.
No. I have to give myself grace.
Yeah.
With that.
That's all your brain could do. So thank you for sharing. Obviously, there were pieces of that I knew, but I did not know all of that. Thank you, because there's moving into the next segment of the show where, we ask the guest or whoever's kind of telling their story, in this case you, to tell us something that the world ought to know. I want to pose first because I told you I find a lot of strength in you. And one piece of it, the first piece I want to ask about is, what would you tell another couple who is kind of in that trenches part of their relationship, when it comes to how to navigate out of it, to be special needs parents, to kind of like twist into that role? What would you tell somebody?
I think it's probably a few things I would say. Whenever we were going we had to, and you'll hear about this on our on the husband's episode, but Michael and I at one point we just kind of threw up our hands and we were like, we don't know how to talk to each other at this point. And so we needed someone to help mediate conversations and understand each other again. I think there was resentment on both sides for various reasons. We both weren't feeding each other emotionally the way that we needed to be in the moment. And so we got the help of a therapist, and they helped us kind of say one of the first things that they said was like, when you're communicating with each other, instead of talking like how we are doing face to face, sit side by side, shoulder to shoulder, like you were on your first date, like in a booth with each other, and try to have a conversation. It's really hard to really argue with someone with your body language like that. And instead of being opponents looking at each other like that, physically you're viewing each other as opponents. It was turn yourself to be on the same team with each other.
Okay.
And so that's kind of one thing I would say is like, try to view yourself as being on the same team. And there's been moments in conversations, even to this day, recently, I have said, like, hey, we're going to, like, just, even though emotions are higher right now, I love you. We're on the same team. We want the same goal. We're not arguing with each other here. There's an issue that we both need to fix.
Yeah.
And so that helps like redirect our brain to thinking like we're on each other's team here. We have a common, I say enemy, but it's whatever the issue is the quote unquote enemy that we're trying to.
You have a common goal.
Right.
You both want the same thing. It's you're trying to get it at two different angles.
Right.
Yeah. That's really good. Wow. So that is not only something that you would want the world to know, but I love how you posed that because you kind of just gave like free marital advice there.
Yeah. I'll pay the I don't want to say how much, but I'll pay it so that you can have free advice.
Hey, we're going to ask Kelby questions like this all the time.
It was very helpful for us. It helped us kind of the rules of fair fighting. You know, I would always say like I was bringing a knife to Michael's gun show.
Yeah.
Gunfight. It's like we were not fighting fairly or on the same level with each other.
Yeah.
And so we had to learn how to fight fairly through therapy and then also see each other as we're teammates rather than opponents.
Yeah.
And that helped a bunch. And it helped us kind of like, if there was an issue, like a meltdown, say for example, before we would kind of get out of those situations and be arguing with each other like, you could have done this differently, well, you didn't do this. And it was very much like a pointing the fingers at each other, even though the goal was still the same.
Yeah.
It was to help our child. We still were kind of like pointing fingers at each other at how we could have done better.
Yeah.
Whereas now, in those moments, you'll sometimes see us, we might be in silence for a few minutes in the car ride home for us to kind of digest what the heck just happened, you know?
Sure.
But usually we can always find like the lesson learned, and it's like, okay, well, you did that really good in that moment. I think I could have done this better. And that's the language has changed and how we're communicating with each other.
That's really
and
amazing.
the tone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And like really viewing them as like, you know, I think something I had said to Yanni a long time ago and almost like a hurtful, like I was hurt in the moment was like, you're the only other one who's supposed to get this with me. Mm-hmm. Not that he's the only other one who will get all my feelings. Another autism mom will get this.
Yeah.
But get this because we have Luca. Mm-hmm. Luca's our baby. And so, that I think is something really great that you guys have kind of chosen both to work on, actively work on, which is not easy in any marriage, but add a special needs child. And
it's an uphill battle.
It's an uphill battle.
To be honest, it is, we are not perfect, and there are times where we can duke it out with the best of them,
Sure.
But
that's marriage.
Yeah, that's marriage, I think we recognize that. We know we want the best for Porter. The best for Porter is for his parents to be happy and healthy together.
Yeah.
And communicating well together. We both come from divorced homes. We don't want that for our children. And so we will work tooth and nail to make sure that that's not his reality one day.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I would say that's in a roundabout way, a long way to say it, but I would think it's a good nugget of advice that we've learned.
I really love that. Yeah, that was a good one. And that was not rehearsed at all. So you 100% just answered that really well. Okay. So the very last question is, I want you to tell the world something they ought to know about how amazing Porter is. Because I love this kid. I love his expressions.
Yeah, he is uniquely him. You know, like he has his, just like any other 5-year-old, he has his quirks. He has his, like, he's just so lovable and cuddly, and he knows how to get what he wants.
He does.
Will ask anybody. He still doesn't meet a stranger. You know, he'll ask anybody, take him by the hand, push the hand towards the item that he's requesting. And 9 times out of 10, he's so cute. People are he's my little blonde hair, blue-eyed boy.
And he's adamant.
And he is very adamant to get what he wants. But I would say, like, something that you ought to know about Porter is he will let you into his world if you meet him where he's at. Not trying to force him into your world where it's a neurotypical brain way of viewing the world. It's entering into his autism world. So if he is mimicking a certain scene on one of his favorite movies, just be a part of that with him, like mimic it back to him, you will light up his world.
Oh, and you do.
And you see the biggest smile in his eyes. He locks eyes. He has no problem with eye contact when you enter into his world. It's when he feels uncomfortable in your world,
right,
where he starts to recluse and he goes to his own vices, I guess, and how to make himself comfortable.
Right.
But I think it's something that probably could be said for a lot of autism kiddos. It's like, if you can meet them where they're at, find their interest. Porter loves cars. Porter loves Toy Story. He carries the Buzz Lightyear everywhere he goes since he was a year old. If you find, and like my family has done, if they find that interest in him and then try to interact with him with that, he doesn't forget. He has the brain of an elephant. He remembers everything. He remembers you trying to enter into his world, and it means the world to him. Even though he can't tell you, he tells you in his own ways.
They tell you in their actions, which sometimes is almost better than hearing it. I mean, we want to hear it desperately. We want to hear it. But having a kid tell you with their actions how much something means to them, that's on another level of special.
It does. It is.
Yeah. One thing, because you just had said really quick, I wanted to touch on was the reenacting movie scenes.
Yeah.
I wanted to just make sure I touched on this because this is the cutest thing ever, like ever. Okay, guys. So tell me what movie it's from.
Secret Life of Pets 2.
Okay. Yes, Secret Life of Pets 2. So there's one scene that Porter really likes. And so that night that you guys were over, that ended up being, unfortunately, the night that he hurt his foot.
Yeah.
While he was at home with his aunt, he was starting to tantrum. And so Kelby and Michael got on FaceTime with Porter, and she couldn't figure out what he wanted. So they were playing detectives, and they pretty much knew. It was like very quickly they had it down pat what he wanted. And they both are on the phone in my garage, like, reenacting this scene. Like, I mean, when I say reenacting, like, there were voices, there was animation in their voices. It was great.
Yeah.
Like, I was wanting to go watch the movie afterwards. It was really good. They had it down pat. It was really, really amazing to see as a fellow autism mom, but also Porter's pediatrician, to see how not only good at being a detective you are, but just like, you're on another level of parenting with him, because that's impressive to be able to, over the phone, just like that, both of you guys knew what he wanted.
Yeah, I thank you. Like, I'm trying to get good with compliments and saying thank you. So thank you. I in therapy language, I receive that, I do, because it means the world that people see that in us. It's not, I'd be remiss to say, like, it's not uncommon that people it's a pretty common theme that people share with Michael and I, like, they see that in us. And I think that's kind of what makes us work more towards being good parents even more, is because people are looking at us, whether you want to or not, you've got a magnifying glass on you when you are a special needs parent, because you might have a meltdown in the store. And if you are spanking your child or doing something that are sometimes neurotypical okay things in society to do, you know, based on where you live.
Right. I'm sure.
We, you know, but when we're getting eye level with Porter in the middle of a meltdown and trying, and or Michael and I are jumping or galloping or hand flapping, we are stimming along with him because we see that other people might be looking at him. It's like, you're going to look at him.
Look at all.
You're going to look at all three of us. And it's like, you do have that sometimes unwelcome magnifying glass on you.
Yeah.
But we quickly recognized that, and that helped us kind of like look inwards to show like, okay, we not only are we being watched, but it's just the right thing to do on how to figure him out and make sure that he knows we are his safe place. We're going to help you figure out whatever it is you're trying to communicate or whatever he's trying to do at that moment.
Yeah.
So I pride ourselves on that. I'm very proud of us as parents. And I do hope it's something that we can share more with people, of like kind of our tips and tricks on how we've figured that out in him.
Yeah.
But it's, I'd say the biggest thing is just being present with him.
Yeah.
We are not on our phones around him, where we really took all of those years just figuring out our child and knowing his every move before he even moves.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so amazing. There's so many good nuggets of information in there, you know, for every mom, and even moms who are doing an amazing job. And every mom is amazing, but every autism mom is really, really amazing. But so every mom, there's so many nuggets in there that if you're not able to do it today, know that you're doing it some days, and take Kelby's advice and try to, you know, like, keep making it like your daily habit, because we are our kids' best advocates.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I really thank you for sharing all of that, because that is just something that, you know, even to me, like at times, like I feel like we all need those reminders. And I think we're kind of in a point in time where we, you know, Yanni and I really need those reminders. So we really appreciate, I'm talking for us, but I really appreciate that as a wife and a mom of another, you know, autistic child.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I guess we'll end it on like, you know, no matter where you're at in your journey, just like Erica said, like, we are biased because we're also autism moms, but we are kind of, I mean, it's a motherhood like no other. The autism motherhood is a hood like no other. It is a group of women, fierce, strong women that you don't want to mess with. And so whether it's your darkest day today and you're listening to this, or if it's one of your highest of highest days, just know you're doing good, mama, and just keep pushing through. And your virtual friends are here to keep talking it out with you and
holding your hand.
Yeah.
Sound off in the comments too if there's anything about this that resonated with you, or that anything that you want us to share more about either mine or Kelby's journey. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
This was a really, really good therapy session almost too for me. So I hope everybody else. Money. I know. Thank you. I can appreciate that. All right, guys. Well, we will see you guys next time. And thank you for listening.
Bye.